Okay, so I just want to start by thanking the organizers and the sponsors of this event, particularly Marcel and Rabbi Cohn and all the workers working behind the scenes to make all this possible. I'm really excited to be here. Okay, so to jump in, my talk today is about Julian Jaynes and the refrigerator light problem. So I'm first going to sort of explain what exactly is the refrigerator light problem, as well as go into the two competing, or I'd say the two mainstream responses to the problem and sort of situate Jaynes's own theory in relation to these two competing views. Then I want to dive in more detail into Jaynes's solution to the refrigerator light problem. After doing that, I'm then going to sort of talk about possible methods, either introspective or empirical, for sort of figuring out which of these competing theories is in fact the correct solution to the problem. And then finally, I'm going to sort of wrap it up with some methodological discussions about how we can verify whether these theories are in fact right. Okay, so what is the refrigerator light problem? Well, the heart of the problem stems from a sort of common sense intuition that I think everyone would be able to understand, and that's the intuition that consciousness is more or less pervasive throughout our waking life. So we wake up in the morning, consciousness seems to turn on, and then it seems to be more or less present throughout our waking life, and then it kind of turns off at night. And I think this is an intuition that more or less everyone could, get on board with. And the refrigerator light problem begins by asking the question, well, consciousness might seem to be pervasive throughout our waking life, but how pervasive is it really? And so the question there is getting at a disconnect between how pervasive consciousness seems and how pervasive it actually is. And this is quite a surprising question if you are familiar with the literature on consciousness, because typically consciousness is associated with how things seem. So if things seem to be pervasive, then they are pervasive from consciousness's perspective. But by putting this question like this, it sort of really draws a stark contrast between our intuitions and how reality might be. So that's the problem, and now I want to define it a little more precisely. So the challenge that the refrigerator light problem poses is to use introspection alone, independently of any sort of theoretical ideas we have about consciousness. So just use introspection, which is just the process of reflecting on our own minds, to answer the question of how pervasive consciousness is. And more particularly, we need to use introspection to decide between these two competing views about it. The first view, often called the thick view, is that consciousness seems pervasive because it actually is pervasive. So when we introspect and think that consciousness is pervasive, we're getting it right on this view because consciousness is in fact pervasive. In contrast, the thin view says that consciousness seems pervasive, but this is just an illusion. So the thin view acknowledges the identical phenomenology or the identical experience of pervasiveness, but it says that that experience of pervasiveness is some kind of illusion or it's a mistake. And I want to also emphasize that the question is not per se about the richness of the content, which is about, so some people might say that the thin view just says that consciousness is only, accessing, insignificant little pieces of data, but it's not really about how rich the content of consciousness, but I'm really interested in this talk in what the timing is, just how is it turned on and how pervasive is it in our normal everyday life.